people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her latest victory over then unbeaten Avril Mathy, Ramla Ali stated, "I knew I was pretty sick before the fight, but didn't know how bad it was until I went to the hospital afterwards. Went into the fight with a partially collapsed lung, pneumonia, and respiratory viral infection. Rest and recovery now. Before we go again."
You never would have known it from how she fought.
How she was able to effectively create separation between herself and a very stubborn customer, a very game fighter in Avril Mathy.
This was a great learning fight for Ramla Ali in more ways than one. The fact that she went into it feeling under the weather, less than 100%, which you often hear about.
Fighters go into fights injured all the time. Fighters go into fights feeling under the weather all the time. And Ramla just experienced that this past weekend opposite the ring, then unbeaten Avril Mathy, who was determined to outfight her, out-volume her.
They got off to a fast start.
And in the opening round, you saw that Ramla Ali's punches are a bit shorter, find the target a bit faster than Avril Mathy. That even though Avril's a solid fighter,
starting off the fight throwing punches in bunches, letting go of combinations,
Ramla Ali was still the more balanced fighter, showing both offense and defense.
Got off some really good punches in that first round, some good right hands, some good uppercuts, able to weather the storm and cause Avril Mathy to simmer down a bit.
Because Avril got off to such a fast start,
Ramla Ali had to get that situation under control, and she did.
Both fighters being in a similar place in their careers, sharing the ring with each other. The difference between Ramla and Avril's combinations is that Ramla's combinations were a lot more defensible. Straight punches from the outside coming in hard and fast. Whereas Avril's punches, they were a bit wider, easier to counter, easier to catch her in between the punches.
Ramla's balance has also improved. She's really sitting on her punches, so there's more power on them when she comes forward.
Mid-range to inside, Ramla showed good variety. She wasn't just headhunting in there. Every so often, she'd get off some body punches.
Tight ones.
Compact, so that she can get off the shot, land it, and not end up paying for it.
Not end up getting countered.
The difference between Ramla Ali and Avril Mathy was the tidiness, the overall cleanliness and quality of the work, the quality of the punches.
And that's not saying that Avril Mathy didn't make Ramla Ali work for it. Believe me, she did. While Ramla Ali banked a lot more rounds than Avril did, every single one of those rounds she banked was a round that she had to work for, because Avril Mathy was stubborn.
Stubborn in a good way.
Durable, resilient, persistent.
She's a good fighter, but the difference between winning and losing this fight, it was in the details. It was in the little things.
Defensible and straight punches from the outside coming in, mid-range to inside, short hooks, body shots.
Counter hooks. Ramla Ali let go of some really short left hooks in the pocket.
Clean ones.
It just makes it that much more impressive that Ramla was able to do all this with a partially collapsed lung, pneumonia, and a respiratory viral infection.
She was still able to deal. She was still able to work under these less than favorable circumstances.
I did have Ramla Ali winning wide, but it's not for lack of trying on Avril Mathy's part. She was a stubborn customer.
Even if I could only give her 2 rounds.
Every single round was a trial. Every single round was a round that Ramla Ali had to work for. Her pro style really is developing nicely. She is really coming along. A wise decision to relocate to the West Coast and train under Manny Robles.
I really like what I saw from Ramla.
Being honest, I really like what I saw from Avril as well.
She also has 1 or 2 things that she needs to work on, really tightening up those punches.
She put up a really good fight.
So what happens now?
Well, this fight between Ramla and Avril was for an IBF Intercontinental title, and what that essentially means is that in winning the fight, Ramla Ali takes a step towards the winner of the upcoming Shernika Johnson versus Ellie Scottney fight for what is the IBF Super Bantamweight title. But I did hear rumors and rumblings rumblings of Ramla potentially challenging for another title with another organization.
I heard something about Ramla potentially taking on Yamileth Mercado, this division's WBC champion.
That's what I heard. There are 4 reigning champions in today's super bantamweight division. Yamileth Mercado is one among them.
And I'll tell you now that Ramla stands a decent enough chance of winning that fight against Yamileth Mercado, who's got a lot more pro fights than Ramla does.
She has comparatively faced the better quality of competition, but Ramla Ali stands a decent enough chance of winning that fight for the same reasons that she won this fight.
She's fast, her punches are short and sharp.
She's balanced. She's not all offense and she's not all defense. She transitions seamlessly between the two. And she can work from a variety of ranges, whether it's boxing from the outside, staying out there, or sticking straight punches out mid-range to inside to crowd the other fighter.
Working mid-range to inside, getting off short hooks upstairs and body shots downstairs.
She's fundamentally sound, whereas Yamileth Mercado, a young fighter, a young champion, her punches are a bit wider than Ramla Ali's to the eye. She is a bit slower.
She's got heavier feet. She's not as nimble as Ramla.
If she does end up sharing the ring with Yamileth Mercado, Ramla Ali wants to be careful not to be too greedy.
Greedy with her speed and combinations. Yamileth Mercado is notoriously durable. This is a fighter that went the distance with Amanda Serrano.
You're not gonna knock her out.
You can't out-hustle her.
Given Ramla's physical dimensions, that she's actually a bit tall for a super bantamweight. Those long levers, those extremities.
Her speed and her fundamentals.
Just playing with the idea that this might be Ramla Ali's next fight. Power would have to go to Yamileth Mercado. I think she has heavier hands than Ramla. I think she's a bit more durable than Ramla. Certainly more experienced, but Ramla's a more well-schooled boxer.
Fundamentally sound, faster, and more athletic. That's what she can use to her advantage.
Fight might have been for an IBF Intercontinental title, but word around the campfire is that Ramla may be fighting for the green belt, the WBC title, next. Congratulations to her for advancing to a professional record of 8 wins, no losses, and no draws, 2 knockouts.
She's really coming along. I'm really impressed with Ramla.
In men's lightweight news, the story that Mike Kopinger broke yesterday, a rematch clause dispute. Holding up the Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia deal, sources told ESPN. The clause can only be triggered by Davis if he loses. PBC and Showtime argue it should be the lead promoter network for the rematch, while Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN argue the same.
That's selfish.
So not only are Showtime and the PBC the lead promoter for the first fight, but in the event that Gervonta Davis loses, they still want control of the second show.
They still want it on their platform.
Bear in mind that it's not a two-way rematch clause. Ryan doesn't have one. Ryan Garcia isn't even asking for a rematch clause. The issue surrounds the promoter and network of the rematch if Tank loses. Garcia doesn't have a rematch clause if he loses.
So let me see if I understand this. You're forcing Ryan Garcia to come down from 130 down to 136.
When you had no problem fighting the likes of a Mario Barrios at a full 140 pounds. You had no problem fighting that guy at 140, but when it's Ryan, when it's a guy that actually has some kind of a ceiling, some guy who's actually got some things working for him, you want to bring him down to a catchweight.
And he agreed to it, so fair enough.
But let me see if I understand this. Not only are you forcing this guy to fight you at a catchweight,
You've got a rematch clause, and he doesn't.
a catchweight for Gervonta, a rematch clause for Gervonta, no rematch clause for Ryan, and even if Ryan wins, you want control of the second show. You want control of the second fight.
When you negotiate that way, you leave very little reason for Oscar De La Hoya to even want to do this thing.
I'm just being honest. What's the appeal of Oscar De La Hoya and Ryan Garcia making this fight? What's in it for them when these are the circumstances?
When these are the terms of engagement.
Now, I don't know if by the time this video is uploaded, reconciliation will be reached, but this is a window, an insight to just how big a control freak Al Heyman and his PBC.
Showtime needs this fight a lot more than DAZN does, you know.
They do. What was the biggest fight that Showtime put on last year?
What was it?
The biggest fight. The biggest fight that they put on. The fight that they put on that was on the same scale as, say, Canelo versus Golovkin or Fury versus White. What was Showtime's blockbuster fight last year?
What was their biggest fight?
And what's their biggest fight this year? Starting in March, you have approximately 4 to 5 pay-per-views, 4 to 5 box office fights, and this appears to be the most attractive one, the biggest one among them, bigger than Benavidez versus Plant,
Yeah.
bigger than Spence versus Thurman, I think.
Bigger than Wilder versus Ruiz.
But this is the one that's in jeopardy. This is the one that's in jeopardy of falling apart since the rematch only comes into play if Ryan wins. The Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN side believe it's only natural that it would be the lead. PBC and Show are lead promoter and network for the planned April 15th fight.
It looks like they're about to blow this thing.
We'll see if they do. Deja vu from the Spence versus Crawford situation when all material terms were agreed to, only for the deal to collapse at the contract stage. Hopefully, this super fight is salvaged.
And like I said, I don't know if by the time this video is uploaded, reconciliation will be reached because news travels fast in the sport of boxing, and suddenly
they're working on a clock. Between now and April 15th, there's little time to get a deal done.
What's that, 2 months? If that?
2 months to start camp, 2 months to ramp up promotion for the show, 2 months. That's what you got.
I knew that announcement last year was premature. I knew it. I fucking knew it.
They made that big announcement last year as if the fight was signed, sealed, and delivered, as if the fight was actually made, when in fact, the fight is not made. There are still deal points that you guys can't agree upon.
Big ones.
Oscar De La Hoya says it's Super Bowl week, and we're on the 1 yard line looking to score Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia. Let's hope the PBC doesn't let the fans down and fucking fumble.
They might.
I just don't see what the appeal to do this fight. I don't see what the appeal is supposed to be for Oscar and Golden Boy Promotions and DAZN when you negotiate the deal structure that way. What's in it for them if you want to be lead promoter for both shows, even if his fighter wins?
Then what's in it for them?
And I'm no bleeding heart, you know. I'm not playing Oscar or Golden Boy Promotions the violin. I'm just saying that in order to do the fight and agree to terms, there's got to be something in it for everybody. So what's in it for Oscar when you tell him that if his fighter wins, it's still not his show? You're still doing the rematch. You're still in control of everything.
More indication that Al Heyman is a control freak.
That'll be 2 super fights that don't get made on Al Heyman's watch. The Spence versus Crawford fight, this fight.
Seems like the only reason Inoue versus Fulton is happening is because Al Heyman really isn't involved.
Neither Al Heyman or his PBC. They're not going to be promoting the show in either Japan or the United States. They're not going to be distributing the show in either Japan or the United States. Doing the show is tasked to Mr. Akihiko Honda in Japan, and the broadcast rights for it,
They don't go to Al Heyman, they go to Bob Arum.
it's a super fight, and it's a super fight that looks to be underway, and you'll notice that it's underway with minimal involvement from Al Heyman, because when Al Heyman is involved, when he's tasked with delivering a super fight,
The fight collapses.
what was supposed to be Joshua versus Wilder, who advised him to reject that $100 million from DAZN all those years ago?
Who redirected him to Fury? On whose watch did that happen?
And on whose watch did the Spence versus Crawford fight fall apart? Because Bob Arum's not in the picture anymore. Neither Bob Arum, Top Rank, or ESPN have anything to do with that latest set of negotiations, and yet the fight still fell apart. On whose watch did that happen?
And on whose watch is this happening? This situation between Ryan and Gervonta?
It's a pattern with this guy. And what this entire fiasco communicates to me is that Ryan Garcia must really like his chances against Gervonta Davis to go into this thing without a rematch clause.
That's one.
Two, Al Heyman is responsible for the collapse of more than one super fight because he negotiates like a coward.
A scared coward.
And finally, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Anthony Joshua's new trainer is in fact Derek James. It has now been officially confirmed. Anthony Joshua has already flown out to Texas to begin training ahead of their first fight together versus Jermaine Franklin on April 1st. James oversaw big wins for Errol Spence and Jermell Charlo last year.
Can he help Anthony Joshua improve? Can he help get him through this fight?
I think he can. I think he has experience with this level of fighter at this level in the sport.
Not a bad choice.
And this is not a bad fight, given the circumstances. Anthony Joshua is coming off of 2 consecutive losses. He's on the bounce, and he's breaking in a new trainer. Any other fighter under those same circumstances, nobody would bat an eyelash.
Nobody would say boo.
Said it before, I'll say it again. When it comes to Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn to some extent, these guys play by a different set of rules.
The energy is not consistent.
After Tyson Fury's first fight with Deontay Wilder, he took on a no-hoper in Tom Schwartz and a nondescript Swede in Otto Wallin, irrespective of how the fight played out.
Those weren't the best available options.
More recently, On the heels of his big win over Dillian Veit, he chose to fight Derek Chisora, who he had beaten 2 times already.
He fights that guy again, and he has the audacity to bill that as a pay-per-view.
For no reason other than he wants to line his pockets with the boxing community's money. I mean, that's what that was all about. That's why they billed that as a pay-per-view, even though by all rights, they should have given that fight away. For even more of a perspective, this Joshua versus Franklin fight, it isn't a pay-per-view. You get it as part of your existing DAZN subscription.
No additional charge.
And if by some chance you're not subscribed to the platform, would you believe that subscribing for that month, just that month, for that one fight, it still costs less than what Fury versus Chisora 3 costed?
For the people in the UK.
If you were in the UK, that fight was going to run you roughly 26, 27 pounds. This fight
is 19 pounds.
19 for the month. Not 19 for the fight, not just the fight, 19 for the month.
If you don't want to make a commitment, if you don't want to sign on for a year, which comes out to being a lot cheaper than paying month to month.
You can subscribe for the year and pay $9.99 per month, and if you want to save even more money, you can just give them 99 pounds up front, and that comes out to being less than that.
Cheaper than that per month.
If you want an entire year's worth of boxing. If you don't want to make a commitment, I reiterate, subscribing for just that month to see that one fight, just that one fight, it still costs less than what BT Sport charged you to watch Fury versus Chisora 3. So don't tell me that it's too expensive.
You're full of it.
You're full of fucking shit. The Boo Birds are out in full force, lambasting Eddie Hearn and this fight for the price hike.
Did you lambast Frank Warren for charging you more money than that for a three-peat, for a rerun?
Give me a break. The truth is that, irrespective of what the Boo Birds are saying now, it's not dissimilar to what we saw when Amir Khan versus Kell Brock was announced. When that fight was announced, you had a lot of negative Nellies saying that the fight shouldn't be billed as a box office fight, that it was past the sell-by date, but you know what?
What?
The collective attitude towards the fight changed as the fight date approached. More and more interest in the fight.
As the fight date approached, more and more people became interested.
Tickets were selling like hotcakes, and the fight did relatively well at the box office, it being that both fighters were well past their prime. It wasn't a title fight of any kind, and in spite of that, the fight turned out to be a success. So I've no doubts that irrespective of what's being said now, the night of, this is going to boost DAZN subscriptions for the platform considerably in the United Kingdom. This is a power play, a bit of strategy.
Because you don't actually need to bill this fight as a box office fight.
The DAZN subscriptions alone for that month that this fight garners will be enough to cover it, more than enough.
Tack on the gate.
You want to pretend that nobody watches this guy and nobody's interested, but you can't shut the fuck up about him.
You're telling me you're not going to be watching this fight because of how big a boxing fan you are?
Yeah, fucking right. You and all the other Boo Birds are going to be watching this fight. You and all the other Boo Birds are likely going to subscribe for that month just to see this one fight. So spare me.
Some guys, they just like to complain for the sake of complaining.
That's all that is.